do that.
Hello, everyone. We'll get started in just a few minutes here. So thanks for joining, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you. Well, welcome, everyone. I'm Tim Vlamis, and I'll be the host for today's Techcast, Automating Repetitive Tasks in Oracle Cloud with KJ Fenton. So yeah, I'm not the usual host. You might notice that I've been with IDE OUC and with Vlamis Software Solutions for about 15 years now. And but usually my brother Dan is kind of leading the charge both for our firm and IDE OUC. But you guys are stuck with me today. I have a background in Oracle Analytics Cloud and also doing analytics work in the back end in Oracle database and ADW and whatnot. I'm really looking forward to today's presentation, talking about taking the drudgery and out of repetitive tasks in OAC. Our next Techcast, if we could advance, yeah, is on the, I have it here as May 5th, back to basics using a spatial index to find the nearest pub with Albert Gottfried. That should be good. You know, here in most recently, we had a Techcast on March 10th, deploying XG Boost model using OML services, Oracle Machine Learning Services with Sherry LaMonica. That was quite good. I participated in that one, and you guys check out the recording. Then, of course, we had the full slate of presentations, February 15th through 17th for the Techcast days, 3 days, several excellent presentations in that one. And then on January 20th, integrating data silos with linked data and Oracle database with Martine Vos. So we are looking for your submissions. So you see that link there. We would love to have you join our community, get involved. There's several ways to do that through Slack, through the newsletter, LinkedIn. We have a LinkedIn group, and of course the usual social media, Facebook, Twitter, etc. KJ is a pretty impressive fellow. Yeah, here's the links for you'll find this if you download the presentation today. They're active links for all the ways to get involved. We would like you to participate today based on Q&A. So please submit your questions as we're going through. And KJ, you've said yourself you want a highly interactive session.
Absolutely.
With, where people are submitting questions and we're responding to them and whatnot. So that way we can also track them. And let's go forward. And we have some swag here. So again, visit us at andouc.org and you can check out the cool mugs and notebooks and luggage tags, etc. So we do, want to kind of pump up the involvement from everyone. All right,
I'm a big
let's.
fan of this paranormal distribution. It's
Apparently,
actually
yeah,
pretty
of
funny.
course.
It's pretty funny.
So oh yeah, save the date. Put down in your calendars. This is late breaking news. The Techcast demo days for the spring will be May 24th through 26th. So block out your the time slot starting at noon Eastern, and we'll look forward to having a lot more sessions. And I think we're probably looking for some sessions to submit your ideas and whatnot. So yeah, let's move forward. All right. Automating repetitive tasks in Oracle Cloud with KJ. And KJ has a degree in information management and technology from Syracuse. So strong academic background, and then a pretty impressive roster of where he's worked. So right now he's a senior sales engineer with UiPath, doing robotic process automation, RPA work for a lot of different clients. Previously, he was a consultant with Information Services Group, and there also he was focused on RPA, especially using automation anywhere in Blue Prism.
Yep, the other guys.
Yep. And he was a senior consultant with Ernst & Young in the financial services industry, doing a lot with anti-money laundering and comprehensive capital analysis and review. He has tons of experience across many verticals like consumer packaged goods,
literally everything. Yeah,
healthcare,
I've been exposed
insurance.
to it all. Yeah.
So you guys feel free to to ask specific questions also. And then of course, KJ, I know work-life balance is pretty important for you, and you're pretty active in music and gaming and working out and active lifestyle. So
try to split it up as much as possible.
Absolutely.
Work smarter, not harder. It's pretty much the way I operate.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we're really excited to have you here today, and appreciate you joining us. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you for the intro, Tim. Yeah, pleasure to see everyone. Obviously introed that, so I don't need to cover anything more. As we had alluded to, as I go through the presentation, it is meant to be informal. A lot of this, we are going to be specific on Oracle Analytics Cloud. I do have an environment that the public environment, just to show you a little bit of what some of those tasks will do. But I really just want to expose everyone on this call to automation in general. Like I did say, it is going to be Oracle specific. To that point, we're not Oracle specific. We are not a pointed solution just for Oracle. We can automate on top of any application that you want. I'll explain how that works here in a moment, so we can have that candid discussion for more of a power user and how would we actually achieve the business outcomes we're looking for from automation. Because I think a lot of people talk about it, but no one actually knows how to execute. I'm going to show you how to execute. So that's the main point of this presentation. So in terms of the cadence today, we're going to go back to school. We're going to go RPA 101. What does it mean? What is RPA? How does it work? Got some videos. Then why UiPath specifically? As it was alluded to, I have been exposed to, I would call it the big three. There is kind of a big four now if you consider Microsoft's Power Automate as well in our category. But why UiPath versus some of our competition? Then I'm going to talk about our core product offering. When you look at software platforms, there's usually a core component of that platform that is the lifeblood of it. I'm going to teach y'all the foundation at the very least with the time that we have. And then I'm going to go into a demonstration of what just using that core platform, how we can achieve just an automation. And then if we have time, I'll summarize it on our full platform suite of products. And then I'll bring it together with some helpful links to get y'all started as well. Because our software, we do have a free download version for anyone to try in an academy and so on and so forth. Okay. So with that, RPA 101, what is it? It's really simple. RPA, as we've alluded to. Oh, let me pause this real quick. Sorry about that. And let me share my sound. Sorry about that. Okay, continuing on. RPA stands for Robotic Process Automation. And it's a term used for software. It's a software that emulates human interaction to automate activities that are manual, rule-based, and repetitive. So it's just going to pretty much mimic the if-then-else logic that you perform. If you think about all of our work product that we do, regardless of the subject matter, there is some portion where you are going to open an application, do something with that application and then perform some steps with the data that exists. That is exactly what automation is going to do. But instead of you manually doing it, you can click a button and go get a coffee, right? Obviously, it's a facetious example, but to think a little bit more about how this applies, I've got this nice video about the story of work that I think summarizes automation in a really concise way. So let's let this play here and we'll take a look at what RPA means to a business.
This is the story of work. It started a long time ago, on a Monday, which was handy. For as long as history itself, the humans needed to work. They wanted to work, to grow things and create things and build things, to see what they were capable of, to stand at day's end and say, I did that, which felt pretty good. So they worked more, built more, and created more, and traveled to far-off places. And then someone suggested submitting expense reports for those far-off places. His name was Glenn, and he was well, you know. Anyway, the people kept getting better at work. They built better tools to work more efficiently. They built amazing machines to work faster. They built computers to work smarter. But still, they couldn't do enough work. Because during all that work to do more work, they had created work, and not the good kind. Not the let's sit around and come up with ideas kind. Not the I can't wait to get to work so I can jump into a new project kind.
The unpleasant kind. The drudge and data and admin and the doggone expense reports.
So the humans had to work more at work they didn't like. That made them robotic. That didn't inspire. They had to postpone vacations. They had to miss family dinners.
They were miffed.
And then something happened. Someone had a really amazing idea. They came into work and said, stop working and start working. The humans thought she might have had wine at lunch, so she showed them a way to put the fun back into work, to waste less time doing the things they hated, to make more efficient the big tasks, to stop making the humans act like robots and start teaching the robots to learn the humans. Not to replace people, but to free them. Even Glenn. Robots that learn you. Imagine the potential, like starting over, to help us remember again that work only really works when we're happy at it.
Oh, look at all of our, oh, look at these guys, all of our executives. But anyway, Tim, what'd you think? Make sense? Not make sense?
No, it makes
Anyone?
a lot of sense. And I know that there are daily tasks that just drive people crazy, like let me open this report and distribute it, send an email, all that kinds of stuff that, you know, quite frankly, takes a lot of time.
Yeah, and what's really interesting about this too is that, you know, think 10, 15 years ago, right? You would have probably needed some sort of full stack experience to be able to do that, right? A lot of these tools now, and it's not like we're unique in this, there are a bunch of tools out there that do it, right? We've gotten to the point now where all of those scripts that you would need to know how to code, we've built for you, where all you have to do is define your inputs and outputs, which at the end of the day, I think is really important because business users already have that context where IT heads who are building may not. So if we can enable you to do that for yourself, now you're contributing to that reboot work that we talk about. So that's what's really cool. And I'm gonna show you that. I'm gonna show you how to build something super quick and super simple. We'll do that here in a little bit. Anyone else from the group? I just want to make sure that makes sense. Obviously, that's very marketing heavy, but I think it actually does summarize the actual purpose of what we're trying to do, you know, within businesses. So, any questions there? If not, I'll just keep moving on.
Yeah, there aren't any right now.
Yeah, I have the chat open too. Yeah, I'm just opening it up to see if anyone wants to chime in. But okay, cool, awesome. So moving on here, this is not an exhaustive list, but when we think about, okay, what are the software robots actually doing? Once again, they're emulating your actions, right? We can do all of the backend stuff. We can call APIs. We can invoke Python scripts. We can do the whole nine, but we can also do it at the user interface level as well, seamlessly. So when you think about it, you talked about pulling a report. What does that mean? Logging into an application, clicking a few buttons, getting to the module you need and clicking export. I'm going to show you exactly what that looks like because I have a demo already built for that, right? So logging into applications, connecting to APIs, moving files and folders, etc. We do all of these various things regardless of the subject matter. Why not have a robot do it? So that's exactly what software robots do. So why UIPath, right? okay, we can do it. So can others. Why us? Well, we've got actually some third-party validation from Gartner and Forrester, and I do like to show this. This is from last year. The new one did come out. It's going to come out here probably in June or July. I'm projecting that we probably will be the leader again. But based on last year's report, obviously July 26th of 2021, you can see us and Automation Anywhere taking the top round spots there. Yes, Automation Anywhere did get us a little bit more on the visionary component, but if you look at that ability to execute, right, that's where we're the highest. It's because we do happen to have the best proprietary technology to interact with any user interface on the planet. We can handle brittle applications. I could show you the anchoring mechanism we need to. We can dig deep if y'all want, but high level, we can handle everything at the UI level and everything back in the most seamless in the market. And they're not the only ones saying that. If we go to Forrester, you can see that was actually a better report for us. And you can see we are the clear leader in the automation space in terms of offering strategy and just overall market presence. I think latest numbers I think we own about 1/3. Don't quote me on that. I know this is recorded, but I think we do have a pretty substantial, like number could be different. Feel free to challenge it. But we do own a pretty substantial, and I think that is something to be said about our customers, right? Not necessarily us, drinking our own Kool-Aid, so to speak. So just wanted to show that we have some third-party validation there. And if you search UiPath or really automation, we do kind of happen to rise to the top of that. So yeah, so that's why UiPath, just wanted to show that third-party validation. So how does this work? Okay, you're like, great, I have a software robot. What does that actually mean? So we have 3 core products that make this a reality, and every automation software follows something like this. If you think BPM tools, it's very similar. It's called Studio, Orchestrator, and Robots. Okay, so how it works is that a software robot is the end executable that you'll put on someone's machine. So you have to tell it what to do. So we have a designer called Studio where you drag and drop activities, and I'll show you that, to build out that if then else logic. So if I'm logging into an application, I'm going to go into Studio and pull in an activity to identify the application, identify the field I'm going to type into, type in a value, same thing for password, click login, etc. All of that is designed in Studio. Okay. Once you do that, you create a workflow. So if it's a human doing it, it's an operating procedure, and you will publish that to Orchestrator. Now, same thing with an operating procedure. If there's a new process that's going to be followed, it's going to be managed by some sort of team. Orchestrator becomes the management console for that. It's not just that though. It's your logging, it's your audit, it's your metering. Every single possible thing in the lifeblood for your workflows is managed through Orchestrator. And then those workflows are pushed to your robots. So just like with the operating procedure example, one person could build the operating procedure, but then 50 other people could follow it. Same exact concept with robots. So you don't need to design a one-to-one relationship. And that's exactly how we have the enterprise grade by design. So what'll usually happen is you'll have a set of developers who will be building this. Hopefully all of y'all can become RPA developers at some point. I highly recommend it. And then that way you can have the license and you'd have your own robot, but you do not need it. At the end of the day, you just need the robot. But I wanted to show you exactly how that all works. And this is our core component. And you could get started and save potentially millions of dollars at your organization with just these 3 tools right here. Okay. And everything we touch in the platform links back to these products as well. And I think it's super important to highlight that where you design an automation, you'll manage it in Orchestrator, and then you'll run it on any type of robot. You see attended and unattended. Candidly, it just comes down to a runtime mechanism. Are you going to schedule it, or do you want to click a button in what we call UiPath Assistant and then run something here? Okay, and I can show that if need be. But I don't see any questions here, but I just wanted to stop. Anything that kind of comes to mind, Tim, that you think might be worthy to ask here?
I think I know for our clients, they pretty much all have multiple technologies. And so that's where a lot of this comes in is they may have certain things that they run in Oracle Analytics Cloud, but then they have other components and they want to, a lot of times people have to do things in different places. And so that's where this could have a huge benefit, I would think, is the ability to stitch those together.
Yep. And I remember we were talking about this even when we were doing our run through before, but I like to call our stuff and really automation is like industry grade Gorilla Glue. Like, I know that sounds kind of facetious, but it's true because at the end of the day, here's what's going to happen. The challenge we always get is, well, I don't want to use the UI because it's brittle. Okay, great. How long is it going to take you to build a backend integration? Or can I show you how to grab the data in 5 seconds? That's the power, right? Obviously, if it's something that needs to be optimized, well, yeah, of course. Automation lends itself to being a process improvement exercise, right? But there's always that integration. So how do we take it from A to B? yeah, so it's there, and then you can reuse it, which is super awesome. So just wanted to show you how it works. So with that, let's actually run a demo on OAC. It's going to perform a whiskey export. I'm going to let the video play, and then I'm actually going to step into the tool and build a little bit of it just so you can see how easy it is to put something together. Okay, so let's let this play first. You will hear my lovely voice again. I want to make sure the volume's up, and I'll let this go. Hello, my name is KJ Fenton, and today I'll be narrating this demonstration of UiPath interacting with Oracle Analytics Cloud, or OAC, to perform various automated functions where there may be a lack of APIs, backend integrations, etc. at the UI level. This specific demonstration will simulate a standard PowerPoint export, and with that, let's see how this works. Before we see the automation in action, let's see the actual process we'd like to automate. Here, we notice the user navigating to the whiskey-specific PowerPoint to gather some logistics based on country. The user then chooses 3 different countries, the United Kingdom, United States, and Ireland, and then finalizes the process by exporting this file to PowerPoint for presentation purposes. Now, let's see the automation. In this example, we use Excel as a configuration file to tell the robot what countries to filter for. Here, we're going to change the options to Argentina, Australia, and Greece instead of the values used before to prove we can automate with dynamic values. Once those are set, we run the automation in an attended fashion using UiPath Assistant. Once the package is loaded, the robot will instead try to navigate to the specific whiskey page directly to export however it's prompted with a login screen. Using stored credentials, the automation inputs the respective username and password to continue processing. Once the page is loaded successfully, it replicates the same steps shown manually and uses our pre-configured countries to filter the deck properly. After applying the filters, the robot finalizes the process, performing the PowerPoint export, thus confirming UiPath can interact with Oracle Analytics Cloud to perform various automated functions, which allows the human workforce to spend time on much more meaningful tasks.
Reboot work!
Very cool.
So I'm gonna stop there. Just trying to, just gauge the audience here. Anything that kind of comes up, feel free to throw it in chat. I don't know if y'all can come off mute. But yeah, just wanted to leave some time there. Otherwise, like I said, I'm gonna show you how it's made. So I'm gonna go through, I'm gonna just go to that website, build a couple things. I'll do the export just so you can see that drag and drop functionality and truly how simple this can actually be.
I'm also interested in hearing your advice on what not to do.
Yeah,
Like,
sure.
The big mistakes that somebody who's new to it like me might
Sure.
make.
Yeah, and I think it's also too the biggest thing I've learned. There's a learning curve with any technology that we're always going to use. It is still new. The biggest thing I think I've learned is when you get into it, it's really fun to play around with it, but having like planning and like design constraints is like the biggest thing of like what to do, because if you don't necessarily do that, like the what not to do is just try to build something without planning the why. And I know that sounds like kind of counterintuitive, like it sounds intuitive, but here's what happens. People get into technology, they try to do it, and then they take a whole huge process and they're like, I'm going to automate the entire thing. Is that really what you need to do, or can we actually break it up into consumable chunks that make sense to eventually string that together? That's the biggest thing I think I've seen a lot of companies really struggle with, and really individuals as well, because they see the technology, they get really happy about it, but then they don't necessarily, because when you break things down, learning those little quick hits about like that configuration, like learning how to loop and then choosing an actual element to match directly to that name configured wise, like, and I have a full build that I can show afterwards on how to do that. But if you try to take it whole end to end, it's just too much for people to consume, and that's what causes the cycles. So that's really the biggest advice. It would probably be more nuanced depending on the situations, like, oh, don't do this loop, or oh, don't whatever. But I think if you just kind of internalize that and just break things into smaller components, I think that's the biggest takeaway I think anyone can get from an automation perspective, which is really just standard development best practices. Janet, yes, right here. In your opinion, what is the best sexy UiPath feature compared to the competitors? I would say, honestly, the sexy feature is our stuff. like just the way it works? It's actually a really good question. From a platform perspective, if you look at, I would say, the systems development lifecycle, where you look at identifying a problem all the way to go live, we actually have a product to fit in every phase of that. But I think the sexy thing is truthfully the fact that I can point and click on virtually any application. There are some exceptions. Microsoft Dynamics is hard to automate on. No software can really do it well, to be completely candid with you. There are some that struggle, but we have a ton of extensions. But I really think that if I'm using sexy as a term, it's literally our proprietary technology, because it's bar none in comparison to the other ones. And yes, of course, I'm biased. I've been here 3.5 years, but I've worked with the other ones, and just UiPath just seems to take the cake. So I would say it's actually our core functionality. It's a good question. It's definitely a good question for sure. No problem. And I'll show you that. I'm literally going to show you exactly how it works here in a minute. Anything else from the group? Like I said, I think it's a good time. As you can tell, pretty informal, just trying to gauge the audience here as much as possible. If not, I'll pop into the tool and I'll just get started here. Guess not. Cool. So let me show. Yeah, go ahead.
I think as you're showing, if there's anything specific that's unique to UiPath, go ahead and point that out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and like I said, I think it's just our proprietary technology that is like really what is most important. So if we were going to automate that example, we have this website. I'm just going to assume I'm here. The login, I have stored credentials if you want to see it, but let's assume I'm already logged in, and I want to just automate the point where I add a filter, choose country. I'll just choose one, and then I'll just export. It's going to be the same thing. You would just add more steps for the other things. Like I mentioned, I actually recorded a full build from start to finish on that demo. It's about 30 minutes. I can follow up with that link if you want to just see exactly how I'm thinking, and I narrate the whole entire thing. We just don't have time for this right here to do it. But in any case, let's go through with that here. Let me actually clear that filter real quick. Awesome. So what I would do is I would pop open Studio. So let me actually just open up a new one here. As you can tell, I've got this one because I was trying to get the login before, because removing the kimono a little bit. I didn't know the login password here a little bit, so I needed to run it to get into the thing, because I forgot what the password was. So there you go. But what you do is you'd open up Studio, and this is the IDE component of our software. And as you can see, we've got templates. We can run things in the background, so we can run multiple processes in parallel if they don't use the user interface. We can do orchestration process in terms of like some human in the loop components where we want to send an action to someone and suspend a workflow. We have a full-blown framework. So if you think about like if you're developing in like Python, someone will usually give you like a template, right, in terms of like defining all of your arguments and so on and so forth. That's exactly what this is. It's the same exact concept. We can build flowcharts. The list goes on and on. We have accelerators for everything. I'm just going to start from scratch, right, and just show you really how simple this can become. So what you would do is click process, and then I'm just going to leave everything as blank, but you would give it a name, a location, and then you would describe what the process is. If you're developing anything, it's like commenting. It's the same exact concept. You can comment and annotate and so on and so forth in the tool. We are working on being compatible with Mac and Linux as well right now. So we do have some cross-platform capabilities. For now on Macs, it does live at the web-based application, same thing with Linux boxes, but we're getting to that point. I think just as a company, a lot of the world was using Windows, and we're in the business of making money, so we just optimized that first. So sorry, if you're using a Mac, you can always download the Bootstrapper, but you get the idea. So right now we've got obviously the newer Windows. We can interact with that. I'm just going to leave everything here. There are times where you do want to code a little bit. This is truly a low-code platform in the sense that you don't need to know how to code. I'll answer your question here in a second, Born. But to that point, if you need to iterate through a data table, iterate through an array, so on and so forth, right? You can change your language from VB to C#. That was by popular demand by our developers. If you go to our forum and you look at posts from like 2018, every developer is yelling at us and being like, have a C# option. I want to be able to do it in C#. So eventually we did. So there you go. So you have both full extensibility there. To the question that was presented in the chat, can you automate processing across multi-clouds and hybrid? Yes, it really comes down to how would you do it today? So if you have a service account sitting on a VM somewhere in multiple clouds and you wanted to do it, you can totally string that together. I would probably isolate your environments and then string them together in a workflow format, and you can schedule that accordingly in Orchestrator. But to answer your question, absolutely, we totally can. It just depends on how would you do it manually, and let's just build the workflow to do it. Yep, but you definitely can. So cool. Anyway, so if I was going to build this, have that name, description, etc., you hit create, and that pulls us into the actual designer, and you'll see this here in a moment. You may notice A lot of this looks like the Windows workflow foundation. That makes sense. Our founders were ex-Microsoft, and they were involved with development of all the SDKs that eventually Microsoft and that would put out. So they were eventually prior to us becoming UiPath Incorporated, we were Deskover from 2005 on, and they were really, it was an SDK. They're just building a bunch of software, like little snippets and so on and so forth. And that's what these activities are over here. And someone, I think back in like 2013 was like, you should put a GUI on this. So that's exactly what this is, which is awesome. So as I had mentioned, it's drag and drop. Every single action we perform in a work product correlates to some sort of activity. So in that example, the thing I need to do is open up to this page, click this button. I can type into the field, I can click a specific one, I go here, I do, et cetera. Like everything breaks down to the click stroke level. We have activities for every single action. So the first thing you're going to do is always define like a resource. So if I wanted to indicate the application, I search application. And right there, I would drag in the use application / browser activity and pull it in. If I need to click a specific button, there's all it clicks. If I need to get text from the screen and scrape it, there's that. If I need to write an if statement, there's that, right? If I need to type into, list goes on and on. Long story short, whatever the activity you need to perform is, we have it. And it's not just that, we have direct integrations as well with applications. So if you think of Oracle, we can connect directly to a database if we want to. It's not hard. You would define the parameters the same way, pull in an activity, so on and so forth. We just also have the ability to do it at the UI level when it doesn't exist, which is super awesome.
Hey, KJ, do you
Yeah,
have advice if you have an option between using a thick client application or using a browser-based interface? Is there a preference in terms of when you're doing this type of?
I don't think so. I would say we've gotten to a point now, I think really in the market from like a browser perspective that even the browsers are pretty good, but I'd use a thick client if you can. I mean, it was built on that a while ago. I've actually found sometimes desktop apps are just a little bit more robust in general because the updates don't happen as much. To be honest with you, because if websites do change, I'm not going to sit here and say that it's going to work 100% of the time. Just like with anything, if a screen fundamentally changes and that backend element, right, changes, well, then it's going to break in automation. But we've got a lot of tools, and I'll show you that sexy part and how we actually automate with that. You'll see that here in a moment. But I don't think it matters. I think at the end of the day, it really comes down to what is the actual automated step you're trying to perform. Because if you can, in whatever application supports that, it's going to be there. Because if we bubble this up a level above and we say, oh, okay, well, the data lives in like the thick client, but it'd be easier if we go to the web page because it's A, B, and C. Well, maybe if we can't get it in the thick client, do we have access to like the data on the back end, whatever the case may be? It becomes now a process improvement exercise, especially if it's going to give you that ROI. If it doesn't, just like we said, you built this. But I don't think there's a preference, to be honest with you. Some people might have different opinions. I've been developing for a while, but I honestly say I don't care where the app is. What's your outcome? What's your inputs? What are your outputs? Where do they live? And just make it happen. So hopefully that's a fair answer. It's just we can do both. It doesn't matter.
The browser is IE or something.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And we can interact with IE, Edge, Firefox, Chrome, etc. The whole nine. But it just depends on what you're doing there. So okay, cool. So if I was gonna build that, right there. So right here, we would use this use application / browser activity. And then here's our proprietary technology in action. When I click indicate application to automate, you'll see this green thing that comes up. I can click anywhere inside the app. And on one click, we are able to identify that is a Chrome browser, and we can go directly to that URL. As you can see, for those of you who are a little bit more technical, that is passing as a string. We can variabilize that. We can pass an argument. It doesn't need to do that. You can loop through, do a bunch of things, just letting you know that we're actually identifying that. And then when we move forward and go to add that filter, I'm just going to simulate exactly what a human would do. I'm going to pull in the click. I think this is the sexy part. Right here, when I hit indicate in Chrome, see how we're able to identify all of these elements on the screen? That's our proprietary technology in action. So when I click here, it's not just looking for the image of click here to add a filter. We are legitimately grabbing, and I'll just do selector so you can see it. We're looking for the web control with the active accessibility name of that. So we're getting directly to the tag. So that's what makes our technology so robust is we have the best selector capability, which I just call it the tagging mechanism or identification mechanism, so to speak. We happen to have the best of that in the market. And what we can do is that if these metadata elements on the back end, so let's say the active accessibility name changed or something like that when they edited it, but this was always like consistent for whatever reason, we can now anchor to this and then find the element next to it. And that's why we have this fuzzy selector. So when you ask about what makes us the best, it's this. We're breaking down that barrier to brittle applications, which has caused IT teams to never touch this stuff. We're saying, no, like you can now, right? And we haven't made it robust, but more often than not, you don't actually need it. Web apps are actually usually very reliable. Same thing with desktop apps, but you get the idea. So there you go. So there we go. I'm just going to leave that. I'll delete the anchor because I didn't need it, and we're good. I hit confirm. And there you go, right? So we're interacting directly with those elements accordingly. And I'm just going to keep following this along, but that's really all this is, right? It's just what are the actual click strokes, and you drag it in here. So as I say, like plan for it, right? What is the small part? I would build this probably as a mini automation in a module, and then I'd probably invoke that as part of like a bigger flow where like, let's say, oh, okay, I want to go export this, and then I want to save it in a file. And then once I save it in a file, I want someone else to go take a look at it and do whatever, or send an email. All of those can be built in consumable chunks because they're really separate processes, assuming you had the inputs and the outputs. But just moving on here, click here. So once we do that, I'm just going to follow the step accordingly. And then next thing we'll do is we'll click country. I'm sure you can probably guess, oh, guess what? What are we going to do? Another click to click what? Country, right? It's very, very simple in that regard. Yes, I'm making it look easy because I've been doing this for a while, but that's what we want you to do, breaking down that barrier to entry from a learning curve perspective. So there we go. We click country. And then let's see, we'll just choose one of these in here because now we're here, and I'll just choose like Austria for just a sake of demonstration. And it's just following exactly what we would do, right? Do this. I'll just click Austria real quick. Confirm. And then after we choose that, I'm just following this. We have that. And then I'll go over to this export option, and I'll just leave it at that because as you can see, it's just a lot of clicks, right? So as you can see, I'm going to build an automation on top of the UI. It's taking me, what, a few minutes, if that, as we were talking through it. Oh,
Yep.
Yep. So there you go. Click that, and you can see we're just identifying that, hit confirm. And if I just, oh, hello, watch out. See right there. So a lot of that metadata element on the back end, you've noticed there was a lot of different like elements like that. So how do we make it more robust? Well, I'm looking for the actual anchor of the login right there. So you get the idea. So there you go, hit confirm. And then if I just wanted to clear this out and just start it from scratch, I am going to do this. And then I'll run it and say, look, no hands. It's like riding a bike with no hands. Woo. But you get the idea, right? So very simple, easy work product. You build that, and it's once it runs, you'll see the icon pop up. The robot is now running, and it's going to follow the steps that we had accordingly. Choosing everything. I promise I'm not doing it. And then click that button, and you can see the export, and it's ready to go. So basic example, just showing some quick things. Like I said, if you wanted to see that full build from the automation that I built, I'll follow up with the video afterwards. I think we can send that out, and I think it'd be really cool to just watch and absorb and then follow it moving forward. But that's really all I wanted to show. I don't want to spend too much time on that. I wanted to just cover the platform and just leave some time for some extra questions at the end. But does this make sense at the highest level? I know it's a basic example, but I just wanted it to at least resonate. So hopefully that did.
Well, it does, especially since we don't have, agents yet for the data visualization and for Oracle Analytics Cloud. So this is actually very, very useful for us. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think if I look at it from the overarching theme of data and analytics here, we can now help you get that data in there, right? Because I've heard a ton of times where people are like, oh, I want the automation where it's like, oh, I want to visualize it. It's like, great, cool. Where's the data come from? And they're like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, what do you mean? What do I mean? You need data, right? And how are you going to get that information in a seamless way? So we can, just like I said, gorilla glue it, where you say, here's your source of information. Here's the analytics platform that you want to push it. Use our tool to transform it, right? And there's other tools out there, like Alteryx is another good example, but they have the transformation part. But if you can't get the data for whatever reason, you're kind of stuck. And that's where we kind of fill in those gaps. So we've found that we interact with really a ton of different software to help connect the dots from an automation perspective. So yeah, It's just point and click. It's very simple. The world's really your oyster. There's not really one set use case. There's like hundreds of thousands. I mean, I've got an automation that logs me into my Amex account and rolls me in all the offers. Like, you know what I mean? Like that doesn't solve like any business purpose, but hey, it saves me the 10, 15 minutes and then I get the money back on my credit card. So little things like that from a personal perspective as well. So.
Right, right. And then I assume, just like other development, whether you loop within a loop or whether you
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
repeat, you just figure out what is most effective for that particular.
Exactly.
And do you test fragility and things like that?
Yeah, it actually. Yep, and it actually lends it. So Jan asked a question about what about failed actions of a bot? Never say never. You're exactly right. I've got it up. Don't worry about it. Is there automated error reporting and dashboarding? Yes, of course. So what you would do is in the tool you'd build this. What we have is we can build this up to like a state machine if we want to, but taking it a level below, we have try catches as well. So what you would do is you'd pull in a try catch. You would try to perform some specific action. You can define your exception accordingly. So we have literally every type of exception you could possibly think of, and then we have our own personal ones as well, our own software ones as well, right? And then on that exception, let's say we define that, you could drag in an email activity, you could log this message, right? Some error specifically that would get pushed to orchestrator, list goes on. So we handle all of that. It really just comes down to, instead of telling you which way to do it, how do you want to do it, right? Once again, like sometimes people will say, yeah, we just want to aug it and we'll have like a webhook that sends a command to someone so we can have the work product. That's great. Other times people are like, oh, send me an email. Other times people are like, create a ServiceNow ticket. Like there's so many different ways. We just provide the avenue and ability for you to do that. And all of that information would be logged in orchestrator. And what you can do too is you can also choose the log levels as well. So we can do everything from fatal to error to warn, etc. And then what we can also do on the robot side, this is just the GUI for it, you can also choose the logging metrics as well. So everything by design is going to log the action that the robot performed, and you can also add that custom, but everything is going to bubble up to orchestrator. Or you want to create a CSV with your log, do that too. Great, cool. Add a data row, do it. World's your oyster. But that's how we handle that with those. So if you don't build that in, it's just going to error and it's going to stop. But if you do build it in, you can actually handle it and make it robust. Hopefully that answers your question, Jen. I just wanted to be sure on that, just to show where it was. Cool, awesome. Cool, so that's that. If we have any other developer questions, I'm sure we'll probably have some as we continue this out, but I just wanted you to show at the most basic level, build an automation in Studio, we would hit this publish button here. This would publish to Orchestrator. I'm obviously not doing it. I got some errors and I didn't have that, but you'd publish it to Orchestrator, and then ultimately you would run this on a robot at some point or schedule it on an unintended runtime. But that's really it. So let's pop back into the presentation to finish this here. So as that's our core at the most basic level, but that's not one piece of the puzzle. There is going to be times where you need some visualization metrics. There is going to be time where you need to interact with the chatbot. There's going to be times when you need artificial intelligence for sentiment analysis. There's going to be all of these different things. So what we did as a company, right? I think we were incorporated end of 2015, right? This was our core platform up until about 2019. I think that's the timing, because I think that's when Automation Hub first came out. It's called Connect Enterprise. I've been here so long. I mean, it's not really that long. It's only been 3.5 years, but for UiPath, that's like a century. So build, manage, and run. But what we did is we noticed these were the priorities, right? And if we look at the systems development lifecycle, let's bubble this out. Automating something is one thing, but that's actually assuming you're already part of the like the design and then the build phase, right? And then obviously your manage component, but there's things before that, identifying the problem and gathering requirements, right? So how do we accelerate that? So from an automation perspective, how do we actually gather ideas from the business? How do we figure out what we want to automate, or take it a level above? Can we monitor processes from like a back-end log or a front-end level and see if there's an automation opportunity? What about those complex scenarios? Tons of customers have like email inboxes where they want to just run sentiment analysis and take an action based on what they think to help the agents out. Can you add artificial intelligence to this? Can we pass data into a machine learning model? How do we measure the value? Everyone's always looking for ROI, right? And then at the end of the day, how do we democratize this? Like, how do we actually get this in people's hands? So as a platform, we decided to make these products or acquire certain products. And here's the full suite that we have. If we look at what we just talked about, it was Studio, Orchestrator, and our robots. But here's all of the other products that we offer as well. And if you look at it, it kind of aligns to the SDLC. So if I just read these, I'm not going to cover these all in depth because that'd be overkill, but we're talking about monitoring backend data logs to visualize a process from a process mining perspective to help you identify inefficiencies. Once you identify an inefficiency, task mining, we could double click into that order to cash process, for example, and say, oh, what are people actually doing? And get a Word document output with the screenshots. If anyone's done development before, what do you always ask for? What's the operating procedure? We can help you do that. And then we have Automation Hub and Task Capture that combine to actually help you perform that assessment and be like a really Azure DevOps for automation specifically to help you perform those assessments and document accordingly. We have intelligent document processing capabilities. It's all built into Studio. We have integration service now. So instead of you having to run a robot, you can actually use server-side triggers. So before we'd have to have a robot running to monitor an email inbox. Now we can have the trigger set up on like Outlook, for example, to trigger a robot. Super, super cool. That was the latest acquisition with Cloud Elements. We have a full-blown marketplace with a ton of accelerators. If you go to marketplace.uipath.com and search Oracle, there's tons of different things, snippets, codes, etc. We have testing capabilities where we can perform validation. So think application testing. We have an AI hosting mechanism. We can build really a mini access database for things. We have a dashboarding tool. We can build a front end interface. The list goes on and on. Once again, we have all of these products. Think about what you need to do from an automation perspective, from not only the governance aspect, but how you're going to make it successful. And we have a product to fit every step of the way. But at the core, you're always going to need a developer license for Studio. You're going to need an orchestrator to manage it, and you're going to need robots. But you can get a ton of value from those products alone, and everything else just becomes gravy from the automation perspective.
And do you guys
Yeah,
integrate with GitHub and all that
Yeah.
type of thing?
Yep.
So
Yep, we have, I think actually, I can just show you in Studio. I think you can link it. Oh, where is it? What happened? Why is this not opening up? Oh, because it's on, hold on. There we go. Cool. Oh, it's because of the, yeah, there we go. So right here, if you go to team, yep, GitHub, TFS, SVN, you can link it. Yep,
yeah.
absolutely. We want to support that CI/CD, right? And we also
Yeah.
suggest that to our customers all the time. Like, hey, follow proper procedure. Like, yes, you can publish directly to Orchestrator, but you probably want to have someone review it and just look at it, blah, 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 vulnerabilities, whatever. We can do all of that. Absolutely.
Okay.
It's a good, no, it's a good question. It's a very good question. So with that, right, you're probably thinking, okay, if I'm going to deploy it, how do I do it? As you can see, we got 8 million. I should have changed one of these to Oracle. My bad. I apologize. But to that point, you get the idea, right? We can deploy. We have a full blown, I call it really an infrastructure as a service. Not a true, or maybe platform as a service versus SaaS, because the actual agent itself is going to live in your environment. We are working on getting to the point where we can build that virtualization for companies. We do have some cloud robots, but we can deploy it. I'd call it full SaaS. We manage everything on the platform side, and the only thing you'd be responsible for is the actual robots themselves. We do have that same kind of setup in Automation Suite. It sets up on a Linux server, so you can deploy it full on premise. Think your federal customers that we have, think your healthcare companies, they like that a lot. Or we can do standalone server installs as well. What's really cool is we've changed our pricing to have one set of SKUs for all of that as well. So you can get the same price regardless of how you deploy, which is pretty awesome. We don't lock you into one versus the other. And if we kind of summarize all of that, what we're trying to do is, this is what we believe is the pillars of an automated enterprise. So if we look at Oracle as the front of this, right, we want to assign the automatable work to robots within Oracle, right? Because we're doing a bunch of work that we don't need to. So once we start there and get that pipeline going, then what we can do is say, hey, we're getting value in this portion of the business from automation. Now let's start giving it to people. Let's actually give them the robots. Don't let it live somewhere, like give them the ability. And then when we start talking about this democratized development, you now can be the same person, assuming you have a governance program in place, to start building these things for yourself. It doesn't have to be an enterprise wide. You can save the 5-10 minutes for yourself. That's still going to generate ROI for the company, because now you're not spending the time on it. And then ultimately at the end of the day, once you have that program in place, just like we have all of these extra products, start small, then you can start adding that artificial intelligence capabilities that you want, your analytics capabilities that you want, et cetera. But always start at the foundation. I look at it, automation is the hub. Every other technology out there is the spoke. Sure, I'm biased. I worked in an automation company. I get that. But to that point, that's how I believe it, because at the end of the day, everything now is working towards automation. So why not put it at the forefront of your digital transformation strategy? So that's what we believe are the 4 pillars of the fully automated enterprise. And I just wanted to make that connection there. Before I summarize, just some links, and then we leave the next 10 minutes for anything, and we can just have a candid discussion here, Tim. open it up to everyone. Any questions thus far? I know obviously people have been putting it in, but just wanted to make sure I stopped for that.
I think one of the interesting aspects that we deal with a lot of times are kind of the let's just say the direct customer facing personnel and a lot of the entry level and whatnot. They're the ones who have to do a lot of this repetitive work. And, you know, if we could help, you know, you kind of push it down in the organization and really kind of get those efficiencies going, particularly because those positions also tend to have more turnover.
Absolutely. Yeah. And what
as we've seen the, you know, kind of trying to rescue some processes over the past 2 years has been a pretty big challenge. If somebody knew how to do it and they're not there anymore.
Yep, exactly. OCI, OCI, is that, or is that?
Yeah, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. So that's.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the Oracle
Yeah. So
Cloud.
is it on the cloud side? Is it a SQL backend or some sort of DB backend? Because you would just install it on a server in the cloud on that.
Yeah. So you could, in essence, the question is really asking, can we set this up inside of Oracle's cloud? And so
Probably.
you might have OAC living in there. You might have ADW, the autonomous database.
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
cloud, and various other components that live in OCI.
Yeah. It's just server based, right? So as long as the server exists, we can usually install it on it. And there's a ton of, if you just search UiPath infrastructure, you can look at it. It really just comes down to Oracle Marketplace is it on with install? I don't know if it actually is, to be honest with you. That's a good question. I can follow up with that. I can probably look at if you literally just search Oracle Cloud, right, and just search install, I'm sure there's probably some documentation out there already. But I just don't know offhand, to be honest with you, because I look at it, I'm very like agnostic, right, where I'm just like, okay, do you have a server? Great, cool, we can install on it. It's fine. But yeah, so I just don't know if it's on Marketplace, to be honest with you. But cool. And to your original question on that turnover stuff, I actually kind of like that as a method, because I think we're getting to the point where we need to start enabling those people. And this tool can do that. And guess who knows the process the best? Those people. What they may lack is like I guess the business impact, so to speak, like at the higher level, right? Obviously, you know, when you talk about that conversation, but to that point, they know what they're doing. And you need to know what they're doing. So why don't they just take what they're doing and automate the portions that suck, for lack of a better term? You know what I mean? Like, and it's very simple. And then in order to make sure that that's governed, we don't want it to be shadow IT. Provide a mechanism and an avenue to get these people a license, provided they actually commit to taking the proper training, which is a perfect segue into, right, how do we continue this? So you can sign up today for free. Go to cloud.uipath.com and create an automation cloud account. Then you can upgrade to enterprise if you want. Hey, we'll love the business. But to that point, it actually allows you to go to our academy. And in academy, it's a full-blown course. So if you actually wanted to get started and learn how to develop, you can do that literally today. That's actually what I did. I was not trained by UiPath people. I actually was training UiPath people when I came in because of the academy, which is kind of funny, but it's because I had the development experience before and I went through academy and learned all of it. We do have a certification that does come at cost, but I would assume if you're going to pursue that cert, chances are you're probably going to roll into some sort of development gig with RPA or solution architecture, whatever the case may be. So that's really where we get started. And I think that that's where people kind of quote unquote get stuck. Oh yeah, right there. So I guess we did have it. There you go. Cool. So answer your own question on the install right there in the chat.
There it is.
Yeah, exactly. Cool.
So
yeah, no, thank you. That's great. It's good for me to know. To that point on the forum, it's our Stack Overflow. Anything you're looking for, debugging help. What is this scenario on this? We post a bunch of things in there as well. We do have community events as well. We have a community page. Thank you, Kara, for sharing that. And then we do have a blog as well, tutorials, look at YouTube, Udemy, you name it. And then if you really wanted to become part of our, you know, quote unquote, the greater community, you can be recognized as a MVP, which where chances are at that point, you're probably an automation champion, might be working at a partner or consulting firm, whatever the case may be. But we try to provide as much of this as possible. At the end of the day, you don't need to know how to code anymore. We've done all that stuff for you. All you need to understand is your work product and be willing to learn a little bit and get a little bit outside your comfort zone, and you'll be able to get a lot of value out of this product. So yeah, that's really all I had to share. That is it. Hopefully you have a basic understanding of how the product works, how you can automate those things in Oracle as well. And that's all I had for the presentation. So I'll kick it back. Tim, how'd you think? How'd I do?
No, KJ, great job, and thank you. It was very interesting, and my mind's just going right now with all the things I should automate.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and it's and
so,
that's and if we're thinking that way, that's great. What I always
yeah.
try to do, especially in my day-to-day, is thank you, Carrie. I appreciate that. What I always try to do in my day-to-day is educate customers on, hey, we don't want you thinking, can I automate this? We want you thinking, why would I automate this? And I know that sounds like it sounds intuitive, but a lot of people get caught up in, well wait, can you do that? I guarantee we can. Why?
Right.
What's the impact? Once you can break that down, then you're popping open studio and you're just building it for you, right? That's what we want to get to. And we're just getting there. The market's still, it's new, right? We're just unwillfully ignorant to it, right? So the more I can educate and have sessions like this, the better it becomes. So.
Well, excellent. Thanks again. And we look forward to seeing everybody on May 5th and then end of May for the live demo days. So yeah.
Awesome.
Great
Well,
job, and let everybody go. Thanks so
yeah,
much.
for sure. Yeah. Thank you guys. I appreciate it. Thank you for the time. I always appreciate it.